All right. Okay.
2, 1. We'll start from 5. 5, 4,
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Good morning and welcome to the SAHRA Heritage Month webinar series for 2022. We have a very exciting program for you this week, and we want to thank you for taking the time to join us. We will be exploring the various areas of interest within heritage conservation management in South Africa today. And my name is Ben Mwasinga. I'll be facilitating the opening session for today. I am joined by the CEO of the South African Heritage Resources Agency, Advocate Lungisa Malgas, and next to her is the Executive Officer for Heritage Resource Management, Ms. Mamakamoreng Nkasi Lisowona. We will be joined by our Council Chair for Heritage Resource Management, Ntate Joe Serokwane, who will be giving us our opening address. So without any further delay, Ntate Joe, over to you to welcome our guests to this Heritage Month 2022.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you to the South African Heritage Resources Agency colleagues for organizing this. I'd rather say exciting webinar. This is just and we sometimes just really need to reconnect in ways, even if it's still virtual. But this is probably the best way to make sure that we resuscitate that relationship, particularly for those that are interested and affected about matters of heritage. My name, like Dr. Ben said, it's Mozart Leslie. Let me first acknowledge the presence of members from DSEC. I also just want to acknowledge the provincial bodies. I want to acknowledge the members from the NEC. I want to acknowledge PRAS. I want to acknowledge members of cultural institutions, but most importantly today is members from the community who are actually custodians of heritage. And shall I say, like everybody always do, all proper concepts. On behalf of the South African Heritage Resources Agency Council, I welcome you to our Heritage Month webinar series. We are very excited to engage with all of our partners. So long ago, we looked at a thematic plan as well during this year's webinar series. The Heritage Month webinar series is a platform, I guess, that will highlight the areas of mutual interest between the South African Heritage Resources Agency and our heritage community. we intend on expanding, on broadening our strategic networking and addressing the challenges in heritage management while we continue to focus on building skill sets for the heritage sector in an extremely dynamic world. In this webinar, various aspects from heritage information management, from development in managing our built heritage and the challenges that we need to mitigate as we embark on the processes of repatriating heritage objects. We'll present an exciting project in heritage management and the work being done by heritage resources management units in the conservation management. It does not really end with the conservation. I think beyond that, we need to think of innovative ways to tell our heritage narrative. And I'm just asking myself the whole time, who's the best person to narrate the story? And the answer for me is very simple. It is our community partners. It probably begins with the notion of care. From caring usually comes a thirst for understanding. By understanding, the custodians will value the heritage, the resources, material. By valuing, the custodians will care and will preserve that. And that preservation is to us very crucial. And by caring for it, the custodians will also ultimately enjoy it. Further to this, we seek to explore potential areas of mutual collaboration between SAHRA and our heritage communities. Most importantly, the webinar series is an opportunity for us to reconnect with all of those who share a passion for heritage conservation and preservation in South Africa and globally. We look forward to engaging with you. The intention is not to talk to you, but to talk with you. Please feel free to use any form of communication created for this week and other forms of communication channels to engage with us. It is the heritage of the people of South Africa. In line with the legislation, it defines our heritage, cultural identity, and therefore lies at the heart of our spiritual awakening, of our well-being, and has the power to build a nation. It has the potential to affirm our diverse culture, and in so doing shape our national culture. With these few words, I declare the webinar open. Let us engage in the next 4 days in meaningful heritage dialogues. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Ntate Joe. We really appreciate the words that you've given to us and all our guests here today. Let me now hand over to the CEO of the South African Heritage Resources Agency, Advocate Lungisa Malkas.
Thank you, Ben. Good day. My name is Lungisa Malkas. I'm the CEO of South African Heritage Resources Agency, SAHRA. Thank you all for joining us today as we celebrate the unique and diverse heritage of the country we call home. We are honored and humbled to have you as our guests. We are further honored to take this opportunity to share and celebrate the many areas of our cultural heritage resources with community as we celebrate Heritage Month 2022. We are an extremely diverse society with many layers in our heritage landscape, and we acknowledge that the greatest part about our heritage is this diversity. We are a nation of 11 official languages that also celebrates other languages commonly used by our international friends and visitors. We are also a nation that celebrates the indigenous languages of the First Nations that originated in our beautiful land. We come from a painful past which will forever be tainted by the legacy of apartheid and colonialism, which is why our heritage is so extremely important to us. Our heritage is a source of identity and cohesion for our nation. It makes us who we are, it shapes and molds us, and it gives us a sense of belonging. It is the story for our children to share irrespective of their differences. It is passed down from generation to generation, linking the present to the past. Our heritage finds expression in our rituals, food, music, art, and our significant sites and objects. This is what makes South Africa a magnificent space. We are home to the most beautiful sites and objects dating back to prehistoric times, which opens a window into the lives of the earliest ancestors of the humankind. Our indigenous knowledge systems, which have been preserved by our elders and traditional healers, are also a vital part of our heritage. This year's Heritage Month webinar series is taking place in the shadow of COVID-19, which has taken a massive toll on all human life, our communities and our economy. As the world recovers from the battle against COVID-19, we are encouraged by the united global effort to beat this virus. It shows that through collaboration and cooperation, we can achieve and overcome anything on this planet, which is why we are taking this year's Heritage Month webinar as an opportunity for us to collaborate and build a global network of partners that will assist us in developing a world-class heritage sector in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful words, CEO. It is very, very encouraging to see the optimism and ambition that you share for our heritage sector in South Africa. And now I'm going to hand over to the Executive Officer for Heritage Resources Management at SAHRA, Ms. Mamakamoreng Nkasi Lisowona. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, colleagues, SAHRA Council members, and protocol observed. Taking on from what our CEO has just alluded to, I wish to bring you to our program for this week. We are focusing as Heritage on building bridges with the heritage community in advancing sustainable management of cultural heritage. One would wonder why build bridges? It's because especially this year, SAHRA has realized that we cannot conserve heritage resources by ourselves. We need our partners, we need the communities, and we need the heritage practitioners out there. Hence, we really, really are calling to build bridges so we can work together. Over the period of the 4 days that we will be running this series, you are going to meet SAHRA's professional teams from archaeology, paleontology, and meteorites. You're going to meet our maritime cultural heritage specialists. You're going to meet national inventory, the professionals who lead us in managing heritage objects. You're going to meet our professionals in built environment, burial crowns and graves, as well as formal protection of heritage resources. And within this space of 4 days, you're also going to meet the people who we work with, the practitioners in the field, the experts in the field who are not necessarily working for SAHRA, but are working with SAHRA to make sure that heritage resources are properly managed. And so we are focusing on sustainable management. We hope the subjects that will be tackled addressing and relevantly looking at the issues that we have been dealing with, especially this year, we will be able to respond to sustainable issues relating to heritage resources management. And with that, I would like to wish you all fruitful engagements. We really will learn a lot from these engagements. So feel free and openly to engage our colleagues. We are excited that this week is finally here. It is the second of this series this year. So we had the last one last year where we were looking at coordination of heritage resources management. This year it is the second year, and we are looking forward to this annual engagements. And thank you all for making time, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nkasi. With those words, wonderful words from the executive team of SAHRA and the SAHRA Council, the Heritage Week webinar series is officially open. Please stick around for the first of our programs, which is archaeology, paleontology, and meteorites. They will be joining you in the next 3 minutes. So just give us a 2-minute transition, and you'll now be joined by the fantastic APM team of SAHRA. Thank you all so much. All right. Woo.
from near and far. It's SAHRA Heritage Month 2022, and this is our Heritage Week webinar. Today you're joining us as the Archaeology, Paleontology and Meteorites unit here at SAHRA, and we have an action-packed and entertaining program for you. We even have a wonderful title filled with scholarly gravitas called Sustaining Our Past in the Present, Challenges and Opportunities in Heritage Conservation. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you to all our speakers and coordinators and everyone who's worked together to bring all of this to the world via the magic of cyberspace. So my name is Andrew Salomon. I'm a heritage officer with the SAHRA Archaeology, Paleontology and Meteorites unit. And I will be the program director for this part of this morning's festivities. We're going to start with our main session, and our first speaker is Elia Katsese. He's also a heritage officer at SAHRA APM, and the title of his presentation is Bonwa Kakopa from the Makgabeng area of South Africa.
Stakeholders who are able to join us today, given the challenges we are having, our experience in the country with load shedding, and which will limit access to such an engagement. The title of my presentation, as Andrew has just mentioned, is called Bonwa Kakopa, which is based on a project that we are involved in the area of Makgabeng in South Africa. And just to put this project into perspective, it's one of many projects that we're involved in this particular area. And the main focus of it is to engage indigenous or local communities in the African continent with archaeological research. And I'm not alone in this project. I'm working with various partners, and SAHRA in this project is one of the collaborators. Some of the partners are from the University of the Witwatersrand, which is Dr. Ketru Namona Mutsane from the Museum of Cultural History, and we're also working with the Makgabeng Community Heritage Group, and they're represented by Mr. Felix Musevedi. And this would be basically the outline of the presentation. We'll look at the Makgabeng in a bit more detail, introducing the Makgabeng, and we'll look at the approach which this research is framed around, as well as look at the example of some of the projects that we're involved in, and specifically look at Bonwa Kakopa. The next slide, please. So to put the Mahabele in context, the Mahabele is situated in the Limpopo province in the Global municipality. And it's surrounded by some of the significant and well-known heritage or cultural resources as well as natural resources within the province. So one of the objectives is to draw some of the traffic from these areas into the Mahabele Plateau to enjoy some of the offerings that we have in this area. So the Mahabele is famous for its scenic and natural beauty. But most importantly, it's important for its cultural heritage, which includes the archaeological aspect of it, which starts within the Stone Age period and extends into the recent history. Next slide, please. So, in thinking about how we can develop a tourism enterprise for the Mahabele, the important thing that we realized, particularly that the focus of this tourism product would be the rock art that is in the area. And one of the significant and key things about the rock art in the Mahabele is that it's one of the areas where you find the three traditions of rock art, where you find rock art, rock art, as well as Bantu rock art. And this rock art you find in most instances in one shelter, and this is unique to this particular area. Also, you find that in the Mahabele area there are more than 1,000 rock art sites, which is more than in the Ukatamba Drankensberg. And this is not particularly known about this area, and we're trying to promote this aspect of this history of the area. And it's home to a particularly unique element and dimension of rock art in terms of said rock art. So this is also one of the reason we're trying to do this. And in doing this, we're looking at aspects of an engaged research approach. And in this way, we're looking at orientating ourselves as researchers and as various stakeholders to the communities within the Mahabele area. And engaged research is an important tool or methodology which we'll be employing to do this. Next slide, please. So engaged research includes various stakeholders and targeted groups or members of the public. And in doing this, the partners in this research at the University of the Witwatersrand, as I mentioned, and some of the projects that we've been doing have been funded by the National Research Foundation, the Venegren, and working with local government as well. And the Limpopo Department of Economic Development, Environment and Tourism has been a key role player in facilitating some of the research around tourism that has been happening in the area. And in this aspect, there's also been reciprocal exchanges with international partners in Australia and in France, particularly the University of Western Australia, working with former director of the Rock Research Institute, Professor Benjamin Smith, who's been playing a key role in continuing research in the area of the Mahabele. And the idea around the exchange with the Australian partners has been to learn what has been happening in Australia in terms of rock art research and tourism development around Aborigines areas. So this has been one of the key partners in assisting with this research, and has resulted in key sort of formulation in terms of understanding the type of tourism enterprise that we can package in terms of the Mahabele. Another exchanges has been with Dr. Melanie Duval from the CNR Institute in France. And the aim here has also been to look at some of the rural aspect that relates to tourism, and if ever there can be any exchanges or synergies between South Africa and France, or particularly the Mahabele and some of the areas or regions in France. Next slide, please. So in doing engaged research, the University of the Witwatersrand has been involved in research in the Mahabele for more than 20 years now, and it has come to a point where this research or questions have been asked around the mutually benefiting aspect of it. What is the community getting out of this, or what has the community gotten out of all this research that has been done throughout the years, versus what researchers and students have been able to get out of this in terms of advancing their careers and education. So in doing this engaged research, which can be referred to in many ways, applied research or community-based research, but in this instance, we're calling it engaged research. And there have been various projects that we've been undertaken in this area. So as I've said, that the core of it is based on community-based rock art tourism enterprise. And the key to this is to see how the rock art in this area can be packaged and promoted to the public, and in ensuring that this is done in a more sustainable way, so to speak. And the question that we've been asking ourselves is, how can we go about doing this beyond the aspect of engaging with the community, and what would be the synergies or trade-offs that could be achieved in doing so. And the realization is that in terms of rock art management or tourism development, community engagement and management is currently regarded as among the best measures to safeguard rock art. And this is particularly so in regions where you find that there are certain communities who are linked to this particular type of heritage and who want to play a key role in terms of its protection and management. So in this area, it's particularly key that we engage with this community in view of developing tourism enterprises that will not impact on the rock art, and also that will not impact on their day-to-day life and their access to this art. And the second project that we've been working on in terms of a engaged aspect of research has been seeking the vernacular. Seeking the vernacular is based on identifying the traditional ways of life within this traditional culture landscape of the Mahabi, which its makeup is essentially a rural one. And in seeking the vernacular, we're looking at the basic principles in particular that relates to indigenous ways of life. And in appraising those, we've come to a point that the best way to do this is to look at indigenous architecture. And this is because indigenous architecture has been appraised as one of the active agents of material culture. And that is also linked to different aspects of the environment. So it establishes that human nature relation. And this is particularly important in terms of managing heritage and understanding how this heritage can be preserved and presented within this context. And one of the projects that we are also involved with and helping the community with is serial nomination of rock art sites. And this has been particularly important because it's also a community-driven project where the community has been feeling the pressure of mining development within the area. They're feeling that their heritage is under threat, and we've been assisting them with exploring strategies within which they can protect the heritage. And one of which has been to nominate some of the sites in the Mahabi for national status. And key to this has been to explore which would be best in terms of nomination of the sites in terms of national status. We've had the question of grappling with the question of whether we nominate the entire plateau as a national heritage site or we nominate a sample of sites within the landscape. And key question from this, particularly from the community, was how this nomination was going to affect them in terms of their normal or daily lives and routines. So in doing this, SAHRA has been playing a key role in terms of policy translation and explaining some of the key elements that the nomination would bring and what restrictions may be accompanied by such an approach. So therefore, finally, we've come to a realization that nominating a sample of some of the sites and seeing how the community relate and work with this will particularly work. And another thing that we are doing in terms of this is trying to assist and grouping the community in terms of them being a heritage group, which will work in hand in glove with the University of the Witwatersrand, and then enter into an MOU eventually with SAHRA when this management or this nomination has been achieved. But for today's purposes or lesson, I'll talk, rather want to focus on one of the recent projects that we're working on, which is called Bonaka Kopa. Bonaka Kopa is one of the first recipients of the Engage Research Grant by the Venecre Foundation. So the 2022 cycle of this grant was the first of its kind for the Venecre Foundation, and Bonaka Kopa, fortunately, was a recipient of this, and this to assist us into the work that we've been doing in terms of engaged research and a community-based aspect of heritage management in the area. But what is also important about this project is that it's the first, it's the only project to recognize and receive grant funding in Africa from the Venecre Foundation. And key to this is that this is a community-driven project. As I've said, that in identifying a tourism enterprise in the Mahabi, we've explored more or less all possibilities and avenues, and we thought that vernacular architecture would be the best way in terms of understanding the nature-culture relation within the area and developing a tourism enterprises that will not have any impact on the daily routines of the people in the area. And in doing this, the community has played a vital role. The role of researchers in this instance has been to facilitate the process. And the objective of the project was to build 4 houses or restore 4 houses in terms of indigenous architecture. And the community in doing this, they developed a criteria within which they chose the participants. The participants were either chosen from 2 villages within the Mahabib, which is New Jerusalem and Talamantlana. And in this instance, the community decided to choose from one of these villages, which is Tabernaklana. And the criteria that they use is that within this village, there are 7 families, right? So they use the surnames of these families within the villages, and ultimately they decided to go with 4 families. And within these families, they look at who are the most needy and most deserving of this benefits from the project. Next slide, please. Ronoka Kopa is another Sotho name, which loosely translates to drink from the shell of a snake. What is particularly key about this project is its metaphoric aspect, because it relates to a particular site in the area or place that is culturally and naturally significant, but in an aspect that it holds spiritual significance and is often frequented by traditional healers for the power that is believed to be espoused or held by the place. And it's a place that is a spring with water oozing from the ground. And this is seen as a place that is nourishing within the community. So in terms of undertaking this project, they saw it as a way of them returning to the earth and being or nourishing the earth. So for us, it was within the context of a community heritage tourism, as I said, and the objective was to explore the possibilities of conserving, not only conserving northern Sotho round huts, but also to explore the resilience of this type of heritage object and why it has a persistent relevance in society today. Next slide, please. So in doing this, because you skipped the slide, so in doing this, because it's a lot of work that we've undertaken in terms of this project. So I've put together a short video that I would like to show you, and if you could play it for us. So as the video is playing, I'll try to play a bit of a narration. So in the construction of a Northern Sotho traditional hut, there are gender relations that are at play. So men and women play a different aspect of doing this. So the men raise the wall of the house first, and then the women will come in later and plaster the walls of the house. And then the men will come in put in the roof in the end. The women will come back again and they'll do the polishing and plastering of the walls. So this is an activity that requires a lot of time and effort. And in looking at this, we're also looking at aspects of sustainability of why this culture is dying off and what it requires for it to be maintained. So we've come to realize that it requires a lot of work, as you can see for some of the objects, from some of the images, that it's not something that can be done overnight. So it requires a lot of work. But what is important and is coming through from the project is that the community has been able to work together, and in doing so, they're working together on aspects of heritage. And this is aimed, or we're looking at picking up from this in terms of the management of the broader aspects of cultural heritage. Next slide, please. So this has been some of the testimony so far in the project that has come out of the project. According to Dr. Namono, community engagement may make heritage resource management more relevant and translatable and sustainable if it's done with the community and not on the community. And what is key here is to explore what strategies are in play in terms of local community, in terms of management of their heritage, which they've done throughout the years. And we're trying to learn from them as well, because we've realized that engaged research, in as much as it is acknowledged as being an appropriate research for doing this kind of undertaking, but it's limiting if it's only the application of either archaeological knowledge or professional knowledge, right? So we are also looking at learning from the community and see what we can learn from them and apply that in terms of a more sustainable and translatable, and making sure that the benefits of research or heritage management are mutual to both the state and communities on the ground. Next slide, please. So this has been testimony given by one of the project collaborators and leaders of the Makalu community group, Mr. Felix Museveni. In his view, this project is bringing the community closer together. Although there may be aspects of community politics that are coming out that they were not familiar with before, but in his view, they understand each other better now, and they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. So he thinks that they can always work together as they have so far in the project, and no task will be big for them to overcome. He thinks that from this point on, they'll be able to overcome any challenges. Next slide, please. So in terms of the role that specifically SAHRA is playing on this project, it's based on the principles, obviously, of the National Heritage Resources Act and SAHRA discharging its mandate. So we are playing a role in assisting the community in terms of maintaining its heritage and also promoting it for future generations. So in doing this, there are elements of skills development and skills transfer that we're working on. Particularly from our aspect, as I've said, that is policy translation to ensure that we translate the policy, or we speak about the policy from the language that the community understands. And in this aspect, fortunately enough that I'm familiar, or I know most of the local languages in the country, which include Northern Sotho. So I play that particular role from the side of SAHRA in terms of engaging with the community, who speak in a language that they understand, which is one of the key aspects, particularly that relates to decolonization and aspects of an engaged community based project. We need to speak in a language that people on the ground would understand, and make them easy for them to relate to us. So this has been key in terms of undertaking the role of SAHRA in this project. Next slide, please. I think again, as I said, that it relates to the general principles of the Act, so we can skip this one thing. So in looking to the future, as we said in the opening of the webinar, key principles and national key points and statements are important in this. What kind of future can we imagine from a heritage point of view, and particularly this future needs to be facilitated through an engaged aspect with people on the ground. And these are some of the aspects we're looking and hoping that this engagement will foster in terms of economic development, social cohesion, and in involving the community in other aspects of skills transfer and empowerment, and they will be able to manage this heritage on their own. And this will also assist the state in meeting its mandate of heritage preservation and conservation, because the state cannot do this alone. It needs all the partners to come in and work together. And again, aspects of reconciliation, the important aspects of heritage and culture in the Makalu, which have been muted for many years. And through the narration of local histories and ethnographies, this can be espoused and told in a way that is more inclusive. And by doing this, is to write from a social justice point of view. Next slide, please. We also wish to acknowledge the contribution of the Makalu community and the Makalu Heritage Group in the role that they play in terms of heritage and archaeological research in this area, and the key interest they've shown in the management of heritage in this area. Because what we've come to realize in recent times that the community has also begun to hold us accountable in terms of key project outcomes. And in doing so, they are also conscious of the people who are coming in and out of the community, because they are aware that people must possess certain documentation things to undertake archaeological research in particular. And they are able to query the movements of people in and out of the research, and they also want to know what we are doing with their heritage when we visit this. What impact this may have on them. Also, some of the project partners or collaborators in the project, Mr. Stelino Chana from Liet in Bobo, and Ms. Monatero Lamula, who's a professional architect and is providing her professional expertise on the construction of these indigenous houses, and particularly the objective looking at how we can incorporate modern techniques or innovative ideas to ensure the long-term sustainability of indigenous architecture. That will be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elia. What a wonderfully interesting, far-reaching and challenging project you're busy with there. And I think it underscores for us again just how important community involvement is for any kind of heritage site, for its preservation, its conservation, and its promotion to be successful over the long term. One definitely needs the buy-in of local communities. And that brings us very nicely to our next speaker and our next site, which is one quite close to our hearts here, since we very recently graded Boomplatz as a Grade 1 National Heritage Site. So we have JP Cilliers, who is the curator of the Leidenburg Museum. And JP will be talking about the Boomplatz Rock Art Site, community-based heritage management. Thank you, JP.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. Just want to check, can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you. Today I'll just give you an overview of the Boomplatz Rock Art Site close to our town, Mashishing, Galemberti, and speak a little bit about background history and how we are currently working with the community in order to manage the site and with the vision of kind of future development and future tourism activity and so on. Can you please go to the next slide? Okay, so for those who do not know, the Boomplatz Rock Art Site is located close to the town of Leidenburg, Mashishing in Mpumalanga province, and it's located on the farm Boomplatz. On that map, you can see that there's also another site called the Sterkstruum site, which has similar engravings a few kilometers southeast of Boomplatz. Next slide, please. The site is located in an area historically known as Bokoni, which means the place where the Koni settlement. These were people who settled in the area in the 1650s, and they were farmers, people who farmed with cattle and grains, and they also made homesteads out of dry packed stone walls, which is characteristic of our area. Previous to that, we also have had people of earlier descent, also Iron Age farmers, who settled in the area, fewer in number, but with a similar kind of subsistence. And they were the people who ultimately were responsible for the famous Leidenburg heads, which is also one of the main exhibits in and attractions at our museum. Now this area, Bokoni, is quite large. It's about 10,000 square kilometers, and it's located on the escarpment of Mpumalanga, and it stretches south-north from approximately Carolina and towards Willemstad. Next slide, please. Next slide. Philip, next slide. Thank you. Okay, let's look at the context of the rock art at Boomplatz. Researchers feel that it basically forms part of the material culture of Bokoni. A lot of the engraving, it's not all of them, but a lot of them look very similar to the Stone Age, the Iron Age stucco-walled complexes that we find in our area. So it looks like sort of maps of the settlements. There are a lot of stone-walled settlements in our area. If you, for instance, have a look at Google Earth images in our area, you will see the whole landscape is full of these stone circles. But the rock art is not as extensive. We know of a few sites only in Boomplaas, which is one where we have about 13 clusters of these rock art sites. Then on Nooitgedacht, and then, like I said, in the Skumasklo Valley, there's also a concentration of them. Now, the Boomplaas, what makes the Boomplaas site unique is that is the community there. There's a history of the Boomplaas community that makes it also kind of unique. So it was acquired by the Dinkwanyani community in the early 1900s, and this community actually was established under Chief Johannes Dinkwanyani, and they moved Otjabela Mission Station to a spot not far from the Boomplaas rock art site called Mafolofolo, and they settled there. And this community was comprised of Koni and Sepedi speakers or people. They were forcibly removed from the Boomplaas during the apartheid era, but in 2001, 2002, this was actually the first farm that was restituted, and it was given back to the Dinkwanyani community after the land claim. Next slide, please. So the significance of the Boomplaas rock art site, and I think that this is what also ensured that we are currently, that it has been successfully nominated as a site of national significance, is that it's not only significant for the research community, because researchers have been working at and on the site for many years, but it's also important for the local community and also visitors to the area. It was the first of its type to be recorded in the early 19th century, and it has historical and obviously cultural value. The site, therefore, we thought that it should be nominated as one of national significance, and because of the cultural, social value, historical value, scientific, and its intrinsic aesthetic value. Next slide, please. So through the years that the museum has been involved with the rock art site, there's been a lot of kind of formal involvement from various institutions and bodies. And so I'll just run through a few of them. Firstly, the museum and the Tabachu municipality. The museum falls under the Tabachu municipality and is administered under the municipality. And there has been at least since 2007, 2008, we've been in good contact with the community at Boomplaas through the Boomplaas Steering Committee, which is our platform of communication with the community. There's been various research organizations, including universities and initiatives, school groups, tourists, also involved recently through the municipality's local economic development section, and because of the formalizing or the process of formalizing of settlement at the Boomplaas, local government has been involved as well. So the community has started to formally settle at close to the Boomplaas rock art site, and we'll speak about that a little bit later. Wits University has been paramount in being involved with ongoing research at Boomplaas. And last week they had again, every year in September they visit us, and they're involved in recording all of the rock art at Boomplaas, not only with mapping it, but also tracing all of the rock art, which is a huge project, but it is necessary, and it will assist us greatly with management in future. Then the Boomplaas community, of course, and like I said, we work through the steering committee, and the museum and the committee has had relations since at least 2007, 2008. Then obviously SAHRA is one of the most important role players. They assisted us when the museum nominated the site for official grading, and then the intent to proclaim was done last year, 2021. Next slide, please. Philip, you can put next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so like I said, there's current and continued and current work taking place at Boomplaas. There on the left-hand side, you can see students working, tracing the rock art at Boomplaas, and it's important because when we do planning for the future in terms of managing the site and in terms of possible tourism development, we have to know where all the rock art is, and we have to manage the impact that any kind of development will have or has on the rock art. I think that continued research and tourists visiting and school groups visiting the site is good for the interaction between community and more formal sectors, so that relations can be built, and we can take hands forward in managing the site. Next slide, please. So the community has it's been a long road, but it's always been positive. Like I said, the relationship between the museum and the community and the steering committee has always been one of sharing knowledge, sharing how we should manage and protect the site, and the message is always that the community is sort of they are the owners of the heritage and the heritage site, and it needs to be conserved, and there's a lot of goodwill there. The community, for instance, came forward and said we would like the site or the site cluster to be fenced in the future in order to protect against any damage by livestock or people or so on. And there's also a realization of the value of tourism and possibly job creation through training local guides who can guide people, visitors, tourists, and so on through the site. Next slide, please. So none of these I'm sure my other colleagues will also, and the previous speaker, Elijah, will also agree that there's always challenges. And sometimes we've had a situation where the steering committee was not functional for a while, and then communication becomes difficult. So we need that kind of communication network going forward in managing a site like this. Like I also said, the housing development, we have to be in constant communication with the committee and the community to minimize any sort of impact on site or on the individual engraved stones. At this stage, it's been quite successful, and we will continue doing it like that. Currently, there is fair to poor road infrastructure and signage leading up to the site, which is not ideal for tourists or visitors. And this is something that we would like to in future like to improve. Also, it's not well marked or well interpreted for visitors. So at this stage, when visitors go to the site, it's necessary for somebody knowledgeable about the rock art and about the site to go with them to explain and to guide them through the site. Whereas if one can eventually have small interpretation panels there, it will be more easy. And then there's actually very little external funding available at this stage to facilitate interpretation panels or any other type of formal guiding through the site. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. Future opportunities at the site obviously includes continued archaeological research and interest, obviously tourism and formal tourism. One would like to see a situation where organized tourism, for instance, in the Lowveld, will eventually roll out and people can visit the site led by tourist guides. It has been and still is a very good opportunity for students and student training. Local schools benefit greatly as well. We have had recently, the past few years, we've had a wonderful research or project called the Mashishing Memories Project, which was an NHC funded project where we actually engaged with different people in our community, including teachers, local school teachers, community members of Boomplaas, museum staff, and other people about how it was kind of an oral recording of people's thoughts, their interpretation of, and the value that they have or that they feel for the Boomplaas rock art site. And this is one of the outcomes of this is that we made an educational booklet and a tourism brochure for visitors, and the educational booklet will focus on the existing curriculum, but it will add the existing curriculum for local schools to include local heritage sites like Boomplaas, among others. And like Elijah also said, there's an opportunity for a kind of a new type of heritage management where community is actively involved by safeguarding the site, continued relationships with the museum, university, organized tourism, and then the schools as well. So everybody it's kind of a collective. Everybody takes hands and everybody's on the same page in managing the site for us. Next opportunity. Sorry, next slide, please. There's just a few photos of the bottom photos are of students which were actually on site at Boomplas last week with Dr. Alex Skuman and Dr. David Pierce of the RARI. Top left is, for instance, a museum staff during our reception study with the Mashishing Marking Memories project, and on the right is also participants of that research project, where we took them to a different engraved site of a building in our town, where they also had the opportunity to trace some to develop a brand for Mpumalanga heritage. I believe that one of the new things for tourism in our country and in our province is heritage tourism, because we have the resources. We just need to market it and we need to take hands to make it work. The site has the potential, together with other well-known cultural sites, to become a heritage tourism destination for our province, and a valuable addition to other existing cultural attractions in South Africa. And I believe it has the power to unite institutions of state and private sector in a joint effort to establish Mpumalanga as a destination of choice. I feel strongly about it. I think it's really possible. Next slide, please. I think it's the last one. Yeah. It's just a little slide about our museum and a few photos of actually what we do, a bit of research we do, school involvement, our archives, and it being available to the public and so on. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay.
Thank you very much, JP, for taking us to your valley over there and sharing with us some of the treasures that are on those rocks in the grasslands that so few people actually really know about yet. And wonderful project you have to try and bring this to a greater audience, both locally and internationally. And also thank you for pointing out the very real challenges when it comes to funding. Trying to be responsible stewards of a cultural landscape often comes up against some serious challenges when it comes to actually getting money to do so properly, and an idea that sites are meant to be self-sustaining, which can be a huge challenge. And someone who also knows a lot about this kind of thing is Dr. David Morris, who is synonymous with archaeology in the Northern Cape, formerly head of archaeology at the Kimberley Museum, and also extraordinary professor at Saul Plaatje University. David is going to take us to two very interesting sites in the Northern Cape that some of us have been to, also two wildly diverse sites. So it will be very interesting to see the commonalities and the differences and the challenges around Wildebeestkale and Wonderwerk Cave. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to try to share the slides here. Is that up on the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about developing public access at 2 Northern Cape archaeological sites, as you mentioned, the opportunities and challenges at Wildebeest Kale and Vonnevac Cave. And also just to say thank you to the organizers for inviting me to share thoughts on these and something of the history and those opportunities and challenges. So just a bit of orientation. We're in the Northern Cape. I show there the sites of Wildebeest Kale and Vonnevac Cave. They're on the eastern side of the province. The Northern Cape is a third of the size of South Africa, semi-arid interior, slightly wetter, and indeed over the last few years with possibly climate change, very much wetter than normal. But generally it's a fairly arid area, sparsely populated. It's largely rural, remote, and it's the least visited by tourists. Biggest distances, smallest budget because of the size of the population of the province. Northern Cape is also remarkable for a number of archaeological sites, just 2 of which are Vonnevac Cave and Wildebeest Kale. They're the 2 that have been developed for public access. 1 or 2 others have site displays, but these are the most developed of the sites. Just some images to orientate you. On the left, Wildebeest Kale, a rock engraving site, public access there, and on the right is Vonnevac Cave up near Kuruman, where there are finger paintings on the cave walls, but also a very deep archaeological sequence, and also now open to the public for some years. I'm going to start with Vonnevac Cave. It's a phenomenal site that runs 140 meters into the hillside of the Kuruman Hills. As I mentioned, it has a very long sequence dating back to just short of 2 million years, going back from historical times through later Stone Age, a little bit of Middle Stone Age, and a very deep sequence of Acheulean back to Alderman at the base. Also has rock art in the form of engraved stones from the deposit, which is unusual. And the site tracks a number of important milestones in terms of human history, including earliest known use of a cave by human ancestors presently, and also earliest habitual use of fire. So a very important site in terms of those milestones, internationally significant, and ought to be a household name for every South African. Site also has this extraordinary stalagmite near the entrance, and it is part of the very rich heritage of geological features in the area. It's in the Kuruman Hills, looking out over the Gar Plateau, which is Dolomite area. So lots of interesting aspects concerning water and cavities and so on. And also paleo-environmental history. There's a sequence of an owl midden where owls have dropped pellets over many hundreds of thousands of years, and those contain the remains of small rodents, which are sensitive to changing climate. So you've got a very complex and multiform record of past climates in the cave, apart from the human history. It's attracted all sorts of attention, television news locally, and it's also the various papers on the early evidence of fire and the very deep time levels, the dating of the cave, have attracted international attention. So every now and again there's a spurt of announcements in newspapers around the world about the latest finds at Vonnevac Cave. So it really has attracted a great deal of attention, possibly more internationally than locally. And I think this is an aspect that requires a much greater response from Heritage in South Africa in terms of staffing the site and giving adequate budget. So the opportunities, it's a significant site in terms of research, in terms of climate history. Its location is quite close to a road, not a national road, but a regional road that takes tourists up to Kuruman and beyond from the Kimberley area, and close to the road going across from Gauteng to the Namaqualand flowers. So it's very well located in terms of developing tourism and public access. It's on private land and it's quite far away from local communities, so that is one of the challenges. It has been declared as a National Heritage Site, 1993. It's protected in a public servitude and is managed by the McGregor Museum from Kimberley, 200 kilometers away, so that can also be a challenge. Since 1993, there's been a development of infrastructure in terms of an interpretation center and this century a walkway. And in fact, so moving to the challenges, we actually closed the site in 2004 because there was this very deep sequence that you can see in the slide on the right, which a section some meters deep, which was more or less stable. But just behind at the top there is where you would have classes of school kids walking past, going down to the back of the cave, and so it was actually extremely dangerous, and also threatened was the future of that sediment, which is of vital archaeological significance. So an unstable section, and the picture at the bottom left shows the walkway back to the end of the cave, 140 meters in, and that was also not entirely stable all the way. So we actually closed the site pending solutions for that. Lengthy discussions, SAHRA was very much involved and very helpful in the process. We could not put anything into the site that would impact the sediment in any way. And eventually there was this ingenious sort of block structure which did not involve impacting the sediment in any way whatsoever. It leans against it and can be removed. It's reversible. And similarly, some years later, we installed this walkway, again with very substantial SAHRA support, financial as well as in all the discussions and debates. We'd had engineers telling us that the best way would be to suspend a walkway with drilling up into the ceiling and all sorts of other ingenious ideas that would have implied digging huge foundations and so on. And eventually we had an architect proposing this method, which simply laid a walkway on sleepers down to the back of the cave and is also reversible. So that was a major step forward. Around about 2016, I think we completed that. And that's now provided safe viewing, and it also protects the sediments. So that's improved the situation very considerably. This was actually a public program that took place before the completion of that walkway. You can see the old railings there, but just an example of one of the opportunities that the site presents in terms of public programs. And with Professor Michael Chazen from Toronto, we had the Walking Tall program from Wits University doing a performance with public present. And this is a subsequent performance by them, and you can see the new railing there, which provides a space near the entrance to the site where this kind of activity can take place, and talks and so on. Recently, on Women's Day this year, there was a public program presented by the Workshop Kukasi group, and with Paul Malima who is one of our principal community helpers and coordinators in Kuruman. And she has organized a few of these open days for community members coming down by bus, limited in number because the site has a limited carrying capacity in terms of people, but this has been tremendous in developing more of a community interaction and engagement in the site. This was also this was the same occasion, but the slides are to show the facilities that were built in 1993, and in fact one of the facilities that was built before that by the old regime. In the photograph bottom left, you can see in the background there's an ablution block which was put up right in front of the entrance to the cave. So one of the hopes for future years is to actually move that and build a new ablution block and to try to restore and landscape that area to what it was like prior to the building of that. The structure at bottom right is where the interpretation center is, and to the right of that, out of the picture, are some chalets. All of these need to be revamped. The chalets are currently closed. They need to be restored, and the displays also in need of a major revamp. And here are some of the images of the displays. They date from the early 1990s. The information is out of date. The presentation in terms of language is inadequate. So we're hoping to have funds for that at some point. Other challenges are staffing. We currently have only 2 staff members, which is not adequate for keeping a site open 7 days a week. So it's currently closed over weekends. We also lack funding. It falls under McGregor Museum, and museum funding has been in decline, as has staffing. There are initiatives and overtures being made to and from the tourism sector, and there are possibilities for some funding for these necessary improvements in perhaps coming years. One of the school groups post-COVID, so we've seen resumption of tourist activity and school groups coming to the site. Moving to Voldemort, which is just outside Kimberley, the picture at the bottom right shows a school group. School groups are surprisingly rare at the site because for some reason, schools in the Kimberley area don't spend a lot of money in terms of buses and getting their learners out on excursions to sites such as this. So that's been a challenge that we've been working at for a long time, and hopefully we'll make some headway. These images just give an idea of the site. The Rock Art Centre is quite a substantial building. This was all, the development here was made possible by national funding through tourism. So it's and this was developed in 2000. The rubbing of one of the engravings there is actually of an engraving from the site that's in the British Museum. So I thought I'd just pop that in to show that there's a history of removal of engravings from the site and opportunities for, if not digitally, or if not in physically, but also digitally, to reunite some of these pieces. There was quite a lot of community involvement in the development of the site in 2000. We had a steering committee that was well representative of the community at the site. The owners are in fact the Kung and Kwe San of Platfontein. And so we had leadership, and we also had there was a community arts project that produced a mosaic that's on the floor in the entrance area. The opportunities access is easy off in fact, the same road that goes out to Vonnevac Cave, and so it makes an archaeological route with a couple of other potential sites along the way, including Canteen Kopi and some others. So access off that near Kimberley, and it's to rock engravings, and there are also other heritage features, including histories of colonial impacts, the 19th century resistance. There are traces of that in the archive that pertain particularly to that site, and also 20th century farm worker life, which we have made a little bit of a feature of the site. Rock art records by Stowe date from the 1870s. The centre with displays, a film, a walking tour of the site were all developed in 2000, and we have trained community guides who take visitors to the site. It was declared a provincial heritage site in 2008. We've had one small project on the side at Wildebeest Hill with school groups working with permits and so on, discovering farm worker histories, looking at an ash heap, things like 1965 bicycle licenses and so on. And also there's a historical hotel site next to the visitor center. So there are multiple stories to be told from the site. These are images from the visitor center soon after it opened. Community and public events take place there. And this was a handing over of identity documents to the community some years ago. So the community have used the site quite a lot. Just an aerial image, Google Earth image showing the walkway. You can see the center at the top right, and the trail going up and around over the hill. And we had signage, which at a time when the site was not fenced, the metal became very attractive for certain individuals in a context of poverty. So we currently don't have those signs on the site. This is an image of the boardwalk, and this was actually after a recent fire, so the grass is burnt down. In fact, low visitor numbers to the site, which has been quite a challenge. We did a survey some years ago, and we discovered that it is a site with very much a niche appeal, and I think this might apply to rock art sites in general. So some big lessons have been learnt. We were expecting far higher visitor numbers. It was a challenge getting permission to put up signage. The roads department would not believe we were a heritage site until we were declared. And so with the declaration of the site as a provincial site in 2008, we were then allowed for the first time to put up a sign on the road. We've had new displays put in at various times. 2013, there was the community, the Kung and Kwe, who were involved with the wars up in Angola and Namibia, and with an image there of Kapilolo Mahongo, who was the Kung leader in his uniform, or some of his uniform regalia, and they had wished to have a display on the military history. It then turned out that there were many other stories. There wasn't a single story to that, and so the display was revamped and made much more sort of open-ended, and with what we've referred to as memory work, and dealing with these difficult histories in different ways. And so that display has been revamped just before COVID struck. And we've had various kinds of marketing. The site is quite popular in terms of television and documentary work. Johnny Clegg here for A Country Imagined. Some of the more dire challenges and threats have been fire. This is a landscape that gets late summer rain, the grass grows up and then dries out and becomes a major fire threat. And one such in 2020 led to the loss of the boardwalk and some damage to the rocks. So that was really devastating. We've also had the boardwalk has had to be remade several times because people come in and remove the planks and steal the gum poles. And this led to the tourism department providing funds for an electrified fence to try to reduce the vandalism and the damage and theft of property. And you can see also bashing of windows and so on. Fire threats continue, and we do have a fire break, but the image on the right there was a couple of months ago, where a fire came across and just jumped right across the R31 road, let alone the fire breaks. So with the very long grass after good rains becomes a real threat for the site. And I think this is almost the last slide. As with Voldemort Cave at Wildebeest Cave, there are issues with staffing, with budgets, but we have had opportunities for post-COVID re-engaging with the community, with the tourism sector and new projects. And a really fantastic opportunity has come up in the form of the Cosmo Art Project, where we're collaborating with colleagues elsewhere in South Africa and Southern Africa and from France, and with both Wildebeest Cave and Voldemort Cave becoming a focus for evaluating where these sites are at, and critical look at tourism issues, heritage issues, and above all, community issues. So this is going to be exciting to see what comes out of that project in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Many years of work and love and dedication that you've distilled into your presentation. Then wonderful to see those rock engravings at Wildebeest Scale again, and wonderful, equally wonderful to go with you to Voldemort Cave and deep into the human past once again. And speaking of the deep human past, our next speaker, Dr. Maria Grazia Galemberti. It's a pleasure to introduce her. She's an old SAHRian, an ex-colleague, and she's now the project champion of the World Heritage Site Management, Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport. And she's going to take us even deeper into our shared human past with her presentation of the Cradle of Human Culture. Thank you, Grazia.
Okay, good day everyone. Welcome to this seminar. And I'm just trying to, 1 second, I'm just getting the presentation ready. Apologies for this. Well, I think I'll start, while we're looking for the presentation, I'll start presenting the Cradle of Human Culture. It is a project that we have developed in the Western Cape government in collaboration with the Department of Economic Development and Tourism and WestGrow, which is the official tourism, trade and investment promotion agency. The project was born a few years ago from a collaboration, but more a discussion between the National Minister of Tourism at the time and the MEC for Economic Development and Tourism in the Western Cape government. The idea started with the idea of a World Heritage Site, which were going to be developed which were on the tentative list for World Heritage Site in South Africa. And the idea was to use these sites, specifically the sites within the emergence of modern humans, the Pleistocene occupation sites of South Africa, as a starting point for a archaeological and paleontological heritage route, which starting from the Western Cape could then be developed to the rest of the country. I have a video now. I'm not sure after I want to try to make it play. But I will try. If it doesn't work, you will start listening to my voice again. Okay, it's coming. I'm not seeing it. Okay.
And understand more about people than we did before. We ask questions, search for answers, and discover things that were causes. Sometimes they are close by, other times far away. It is impossible.
So, yeah, send the link on the presentation. But if you Google YouTube and Cradle of Human Culture, you can see the video itself. Sorry about that. It is quite a beautiful video, and WestGrow has actually put quite a bit of effort in it, all of us. So if you want to look at it, you can just look at it. Okay, so I will describe a little bit about the Cradle of Human Culture, sustainability of the site of the route. What have we done from a marketing perspective, community involvement and collaboration, and then a few reflections. I think lots of what I'm saying will overlap slightly with what has already been said today, and the experience of our sites is quite close to the experience of other sites in the country. So this is what I've already discussed, and it is also collaboration with the Cradle of Humankind. So while the Cradle of Humankind encapsulates, sorry, I went back. encapsulate the physical evolution of hominids and to Homo sapiens. So Cradle of Human Culture represents the journey to behavioral modernity. Okay. I'm sorry, we're having some technical challenges. So this project aims to contribute to social inclusion by educating the public about our common origin and about how the development of modern human behavior is recorded for the first time along the coast of South Africa and in South Africa in general, as we've seen with the Voldemort cave. So this project also aims to strengthen existing cooperation between the local and the provincial sphere of government, and of course also the national sphere of government. The Cradle of Human Culture was officially launched in April 2019 at the World Trade Market Africa at the Convention Center. And it was about a year before COVID happened. The objective of the Cradle of Human Culture to provide visitors with a tourism experience which educates about the overall environment in which modern human behavior emerged in South Africa, but also, as my colleagues have mentioned before, especially Elijah and also my other colleague, contribute to the socio-economic empowerment and beneficiation within local communities, especially in rural areas, through fostering partnership with stakeholders. And here I think it's important that I mention that our collaboration with the Cradle of Humankind comes also from the attempt to move the tourists, to change the pattern in which tourists land in Johannesburg, come to Cape Town, and often do not visit the Cradle of Humankind in Johannesburg. The idea is to get to know the two cradles, to advertise each other so that tourists from the Cradle of Humankind get to know about the Cradle of Human Culture before they come to Cape Town, and tourists that are in the Cradle of Human Culture get to know about the Cradle of Humankind, and when they move back to Gauteng, when they fly back to Gauteng, they actually go and visit it. This is the reason why our two logos are very similar as well. It is a collaboration between the two, and is not, we have not copy them, if we want to say that. It is actually a direct collaboration, and I'll show you later how we do that. This is the map of our Cradle of Human Culture. Is currently slightly outdated, but we haven't updated the website yet, so the map itself is slightly outdated. The sites, the biggest sites indicated here are Deep Kloof Rock Shelter and Pinnacle Point and Blombos Cave, which were the sites on the nomination dossier for the World Heritage Site. Now, the current nomination dossier, which we are hoping to submit to UNESCO in January, is going to include the Deep Kloof Rock Shelter at Pinnacle Point in the Western Cape and Sibudu Cave in KwaZulu-Natal. This is the reason why we're also engaging with the Department of Economic Development and AMAFA in KwaZulu-Natal to expand the Cradle of Human Culture as a heritage route from the Western Cape to KZN. Obviously, we have the Eastern Cape in the middle, and we have started conversation also with the Department of Arts and Culture in the Eastern Cape to discuss the possibility of expanding the site to the route to the Eastern Cape once Classes River is also included in the nomination. Just for reference, the three sites that are going to be included in the nomination at a later stage are Blombos Cave, possibly Classes River, and Border Cave. So this map shows that there are two routes, the artist journey along the west coast and the coastal journey along the southern Cape Coast. This year we have specifically focused on the west coast, but we are marketing the entire route as one. So some of the sites that are on the route are Kwatu, the Osan Heritage Interpretation Center, the West Coast Fossil Park, which I'm sure that most of you are familiar with, Deep Blue Frog Shelter, which is currently not open to the public, but we have funding to develop infrastructure at the site as potential World Heritage site. So we are hopefully doing conservation at the site this year, and then we will be able to open to the public officially later next year. This is also Deep Blue Frog Shelter, Elands Bay Cave, where we have opened actually a new museum. We have proclaimed a new museum which is going to work as visitor center for Deep Blue Frog Shelter and for the area around it, and for the World Heritage Site potential prospective World Heritage Site overall. These are the fish traps in Stilby, which are also part of the route, and this is also collaboration with Cape Nature, which is responsible for their management. But I know I've seen on the program that the underwater unit will discuss the management of this fish trap later in the week. Cape St. Blaise Cave in Mossel Bay, Pinnacle Point Site Complex is also part of the route as prospective World Heritage Site, and and also Nelson Bay Cave, which picture I don't have. We have a few other sites, so the idea is to have as anchor sites the prospective World Heritage sites, and then we are having other sites that are relevant to archaeology and paleontology in South Africa, especially related to the emergence of modern human behavior. So why did we decide to have a route and market this as a route? So tourism routes have demonstrated to be an effective vehicle for local economic development in rural contexts. And again, this is the idea of moving tourists from the center, so from Cape Town out into the more rural areas. There is more leverage when we have all sites together rather than one site at a time. There is a uniqueness in the concept of modern human behavior, developing of acknowledging modern human behavior along the route. There are quite a few successful cultural routes in Europe, and they seem to grow particularly in the last few years. But one of the most successful examples in South Africa is actually the Midland Meander in KwaZulu-Natal, which had a bit of a down moment a few years ago, and now has seen a revival. In terms of heritage and cultural tourism, we conducted a feasibility study before launching the route to see whether the project was feasible. And the feasibility study also focused on the visitor centers that we're planning around the site. We are monitoring very closely the different experiences on the route and see how they're performing year by year and also month by month to understand the pattern. Obviously, when we are speaking about tourism and COVID-19, we know the effect that COVID-19 has had on tourism. One thing that we are very aware of is that the declaration of the sites of World Heritage Site will not necessarily bring additional tourists. So it can actually be detrimental if the wow effect is not, or what is defined as the wow effect is not achieved at these sites. So if people visit the sites and they are not satisfied with the status of the sites, they don't get the experience that they expect from a World Heritage Site, they will most likely not recommend to other tourists. So the idea is to, we need to make sure that the experience is suitable for a World Heritage Site. Key requirement from a feasibility perspective is to have a strategic developmental approach, a compelling narrative, an integrated interpretation strategy, an investment in tourism, interpretative and facility infrastructure, effective conservation strategies and measure, structured stakeholder participation, integrated tourism marketing and promotion, effective and accountable leadership and management, innovative funding for sustainability and education and economic benefits. So these were the key requirements that were identified in the feasibility studies to ensure that the route becomes actually feasible. And I have highlighted in bold. I say the thing that I think we are trying to do well, or at least we are very aware that we need to have into our project. Some of them, and of course, funding. I will discuss later about funding. Is one of the main issues, has been mentioned before by the other presenters as well. So these are the data by main attraction on the route in 2017-2018. We have compared them to other sites in South Africa, like the Cradle of Humankind, because it's basically the main site, the main site to which we can represent. And when we mention the Cradle of Humankind, we mean Maropeng. These are the numbers before the pandemic. And we know that of the 310,000 visitors at the Cradle of Humankind in Maropeng in 2017-18, half of it was schools. So we have to consider all these details when we are thinking about how many visitors we're going to get to these sites. What are we considering as a sustainable number of visitors at the sites? We need to consider the remoteness of some of these sites. We need to consider the interest that people have and how close, for instance, they are to schools to be visited, and the amount of funding that we can feasibly, let's say, invest to ensure that there is a return. The numbers we have the recent number for the West Coast Fossil Park and also for Poitou and Pinnacle Point. But these are the numbers we're working with. We don't expect to move away much from these numbers. And we have looked at, and thanks to WestGrow, we have quite a lot of information about what tourism in the Western Cape are looking at. And some of these are also they've also looked at the national tourism, but since we are focusing mainly in the Western Cape at the moment, I will present the figures also for the Western Cape. Now, these are very old numbers. I do acknowledge that when we put together the business plan in 2018, 2019, these were the numbers that were available to us. And this is why we use these numbers. Now we are looking at the new numbers, and I will show you how different they are now from then. So the top 10 activities in the Western Cape includes cultural and heritage as 15%. So 15% of tourists, they find that the reason why they visited the Western Cape was also for culture and heritage. This number in the same type of survey between January and June 2018 indicated that on the West Coast, 13.5% of the tourists were looking at cultural heritage. If you see, it's basically the second most common activities with beaches. From January, June 2021, the number dropped to 9.1%. Now, there is one probably very clear reason for this, is that we lost all our most of our international visitors. And for international visitors, the cultural aspect it was represented as more important than for local and domestic visitors. So I think the drop, the significant drop comes from the lack of international tourists. The top 10 activities, in fact, for international travel in 2021, and this is based on this is a WestGrow destination performance report based on the South African tourism data, is that 25.8% of international travelers are looking at cultural historical heritage as one of the activities for which to travel. In the top 20 Western Cape attraction by international tourists, we see there is the only similar is probably Robben Island, which is 13.3% of visitors go to Robben Island. For the rest, we have mostly natural activities, and then we have Kengo Cave, which is part of our route, with 10.3% of tourists. In the West Coast, January, June 2022, so the first 6 months of this year, the top activities undertaken culture and heritage only comes to 4.4%. So it is quite a significant drop from the 9.1% that we saw in 2021. We have also changed, and I think WestGrow will be able to elaborate more on this, but we have changed the way in which the data is collected. So some of this data is now collected by mobile interaction and activities in the area. So it is probably more reliable than the previous data that was collected at tourism centers. Similarly, top points of interest visited by locals. Locals is basically Western Cape residents. In June 2022 was represented at 4.4% that we were discussing before. So what have we done from a marketing perspective? What has been done mostly by WESGR and by the Department of Economic Development and Tourism to ensure exposure and to create potential collaboration? We have quite a few online features, and I'm not going to read all the platforms that have been used to advertise the Cradle of Human Culture over the last 3 years, 2-3 years. Then we have some examples are, for instance, we had the Ali Kroikel Trail from Blombush to Stilby that was speaking about the Cradle of Human Culture and the experience of seeing Blombos from the coastline, which is not accessible anymore. We had for a year a feature in the National Geographic Traveler Africa collection. Then we had quite a few of online features with Getaway Magazine, Cape Town, etc., for instance. And then we had a few events with collaboration with the Cradle of Humankind. So we had a couple of workshops. We had a webinar and workshop in occasion of Africa Day in 2020. And then we had a discussion between the curator at Maropeng and one of the guides at the West Coast Fossil Park in 2021. And we have more recently, we had a workshop and a webinar, another webinar as a collaboration. And we're having one at the end of October, actually. So keep the eyes open for that. We also brought it to China. When I say we, WESGR is our team, brought the Cradle of Human Culture to China, both virtually during COVID and non-virtually in person, I think after COVID. We also went to India with this, and there is quite a grown interest in China and India for cultural sites and for visiting cultural sites. And it was we were finalists in the World Trade Market Africa Award for most compelling tourism story. WESGR is also putting it on the radar of Cruise Cape Town, is increasing the experiences of cruise in Cape Town, and this was part of one of the experiences that was brought to them. We have regularly media hostings and media hosting and also guide hosting at some of the experiences. So, for instance, we had at the beginning of the year, we had say a group of media and a group of guides visiting the different sites along the West Coast. They were accompanied by one of our guides, and they were quite excited about the possibility of selling the route to their clients. We are also training with the Department of Economic Development and Tourism about 15 guides, which will be able to take visitors to the different sites. Other initiative, we see that we need a diversification of offering, like what and the West Coast Fossil Park have seen. We had some interest from the hop on and hop off bus. There was an interest at the beginning of last year to create a hop on and hop off bus along the entire route. I think that it hasn't been launched properly yet, but it is an idea that has been studied and expanded quite significantly. The Point of Discovery Center is trying to open a visitor center in proximity of Pinnacle Point, and so we have also collaboration with them. More recently, we are going to have a West Coast Cradle of Human Culture campaign between the 8th of September and the 30th of October. So on the 22nd, which is Thursday, we're going to have a cultural tourism showcase at the West Coast Fossil Park. And the 24th of September is the Guatu Heritage Day Festival, where we will launch one of the Cradle of Human Culture exhibition. And then we have 2 months in which we run a campaign with online promotion, social media takeover, and competition for the 2 months. As we have mentioned, as my colleagues have mentioned before, it's very hard to have any of this done without the support and the understanding of the communities and the participation of the communities living around the sites and being directly connected to the sites. We have done some open days just to create more awareness amongst the communities of the existence of these sites, or also to allow access to these sites for people that normally wouldn't be able to access because of their remoteness. So we have a couple of open days at Pinnacle Point. We try to have 2 per year, one in February, one in September, although I think this year we will stick with February. So we have groups coming from the Diaz Museum and also Khoi and San representatives which come and visit the site, and if they want, they can do their rituals as well. We have a school days. We brought kids at Deep Blue Frog Shelter. John Parkington was their guide, and we took grade 6, I think, from schools at Elands Bay to this site, which is very close to Elands Bay, but nobody actually knows about its existence within Elands Bay. And we will try to do the same with the Bredling Hayes School to bring the kids in grade 6 to Deep Blue Frog Shelter. We are also having quite a few programs now with the newly established Elands Bay Museum, which I prefer to call a visitor center for the prospective World Heritage Site. So we are having a oral history program for Heritage Month this week, and we will have another open day at Deep Blue Frog Shelter as well. So I think my reflections are not very different from what my colleagues have already said. So first of all, we need support from the community and local businesses, but it's also very important that we don't overpromise. It is important that we don't overpromise the amount of jobs that we cannot actually sustain and achieve. The collaboration with tourism is essential, but is also essential to be reasonable about the number of potential visitors that we're going to have at the sites. And I think for this reason, it's also very important to keep track of how many visitors we have at other similar sites. This project is a very lucky project, I think, because it's been supported financially quite extensively by the Western Cape government. So when we speak about sustainability, we are aware that there will be a few years in which some of the activities that we are proposing, for instance, the newly established visitor center at Elands Bay, will not be sustainable by itself, and it will need operational funding and other seed funding from the government. So in this regard, this project is probably luckier than other projects that we have seen so far, because there is a little bit of funding that has been promised for these sites. But I'm saying we haven't given funding directly to, for instance, the West Coast Fossil Park or Patucho. So I want to make sure that distinction is clear. The collaboration amongst all parties is essential, and having a marketing strategy that encompasses the entire route and all the experience is also as important. And then we are looking into preparing other sites and adding other sites to the route. We have some sites that we already have in mind, like for instance, Makis Riviere. Classes River is in Eastern Cape, but we will think, we will not include Classes River itself, or probably a visitor center for it. And Makis Riviere in the Western Cape, probably something like Newport. But there is a need for additional funding, but also we need to weigh up the economic beneficiation of opening these sites to the public. So how much should we invest in these sites, and how much are the communities going to benefit from opening the sites? So that is always our main concern when we look at opening sites in terms of tourism. And I think that's it. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you to SAHRA for organizing this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Grazia. Wonderful to see these incredible sites their potential being developed and exploited in a responsible and sustainable manner. And now we go towards the closing part of our archaeology, paleontology, and meteorites webinar. We'll have a short open discussion where we invite anyone with comments or questions to please just put them in the chat box on Microsoft Teams, and I'm sure we'll be happy to talk and respond. But also, if there aren't any comments or questions, that's absolutely fine. Right, so I think we will probably then progress to the thank you and closing remarks. These will be done by our SAHRA Heritage Executive, Mamakomoreng Nkasi Lesawana. Thank you, Komi.
Oh, yes, thanks, Ben. Good afternoon. I have technical issues where I'm sitting, so I needed to change office quickly just to get the space, and apologies for that little inconvenience. I've been given the opportunity to thank our guests, and I would like very much to thank the SAHRA team, starting with the program director, Andrew. Thank you for the job well done. Phil, for putting together and ensuring that our guests were able to present today. Thank you so much. We had the SAHRA expert, Elijah, presenting a topic on Mahabeng, and that a JP from Leidenberg Museums also presented on the Blomplatz gravesite, a site that I think very soon we will be declaring as a national heritage site. The processes are being concluded there. And we could have not gone through the appreciation of her heritage resources without the presentation of Dr. Morris from the Northern Cape, a practitioner very much associated with the heritage resources of the Northern Cape, and Dr. Maria Grazia presenting to us the Cradle of human culture, expanding these heritage resources and their protection to other provinces, not just to the Western Cape. And so we thank you for your enriching presentations today, most of which really underscored the participation of the communities in heritage resources management. When we were discussing this, Philip was very clear around heritage tourism as a subject that we need to engage more closely with as SAHRA. Often when we protect the heritage resources formally, we tend to shy away from the question of communities asking us, you declare it, so what? But with the research that's happening on site, with the
participation of community members, such as it's the case with Boomplatz, we will then be able to respond to the question of what then with respect to heritage tourism. And so I would like very much to thank the audience in the session today. And there's another session that's going to start at 2 o'clock, Ben? At 1 o'clock, and that will be the maritime. Please continue to support this session, engaging us. There wasn't much of the debates in here. I think the presentations were very good. We would like to see more of engagements in the sections that are coming. Thank you all for your time. Andrew, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cormy, and thanks to everyone. It's wonderful to gather amongst people who really care about heritage and who are doing their best to promote and safeguard what we have so richly in South and Southern Africa. Thanks to everyone. Goodbye.
Andrew, it's Ben.
Hello, Ben.
Before you conclude, I'd just like everyone to turn their microphones on. If you could please switch your microphones on. That is correct. Switch your microphones on. If all the guests can switch their microphones on, please give a big round of applause to SAHRA's Archaeology, Paleontology, and Meteorites unit.
Well, thank you, Ben. That gets us right in the warm, fuzzy feelings. And thank you again to everyone organizing and being part of the technical crew of all this. It's quite an undertaking, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.